Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hobby Lodge. In this video I'm going to talk about Adepticon 2025. So what is Adepticon, you're thinking? Well, I can tell you it is the largest tabletop wargaming event in the world. So not tabletop board gaming, not role playing. There are events specifically for that. One in the US is called Gen Con. In the UK we have UK Games Expo. This is really dedicated to the awesome hobby which is tabletop wargaming. And yes, my son and I have been talking about going for many years. It's always felt like a bit of an extravagant thing to do because it is based in the US. You know, you are talking about traveling out there, staying over. It's a 4-day event, and just doing that for an event has always felt like something we could possibly never really do. But as my son's been getting older and older and we're thinking there's less and less opportunities for us to do this, we decided to bite the bullet and actually get it done. So yeah, we went out last Wednesday and we were there for the entire event. We had to travel on the Sunday, which was the last day of the event, but I think by that point we'd seen and done pretty much everything there was to do. So I felt like we gave the event a really good crack. So I thought I would talk about the event a bit today, and then I will show you, of course, some of the pickups I had whilst I was there. And my son got even more bits and pieces which are up at the house, but I'll happily talk about those as well. So yes, the event takes place in Milwaukee, which is just north of Chicago. In fact, the previous events have been in Chicago, but the venue, as my understanding, was quite remote and quite difficult to get to, and there wasn't much around. Where this time, because it's taking place in downtown Milwaukee, there's stuff everywhere. You know, you've got your shops, you've got your restaurants, you've got your transport links. In fact, the tram is actually free in Milwaukee, so you can jump on it and jump off wherever you want. It's got some really good bits in the downtown of Milwaukee. In fact, we actually did a tour whilst we were there around Milwaukee and saw some cool stuff. So yeah, definitely, if you can get a chance to, whenever you go to some place, look up on things like TripAdvisor or other tools, or get your guide, things like that, and see what's around the city while you're there, because I think we did a bus tour. It was like $30 and we got to see a lot just outside of the convention. But the convention itself was in the Bard Center, an actually quite significant sized building, essentially over 3 floors, I think the event was, with bits sporadically put around in all the different meeting rooms and event spaces they had there, but quite a lot going on. We got there on the Wednesday. You could go and pick your tickets up early, so we went in, went straight up to the top, got our passes so that we didn't have to wait around. There we go. And that meant on the Thursday when we got there, we could just go straight in without having to be in the queues, which I thought was a nice thing to be able to do. So yeah, we got our tickets, went out for a meal Wednesday night, and we were ready, set to go on Thursday morning. The event opened from about 10 in the morning until very late, and I've never really seen this in an event before. A bit in UK Games Expo. In UK Games Expo, you can go to the hotels around the area and you can play games into the evening. But the Bard Center stayed open, I think, right up till like midnight or something. And there were people playing games from the early hours in the morning, so from 8 AM, maybe even earlier than that, right up to very late at night. They left all the conferencing rooms open, they left all the gaming space open, and people were just constantly playing games. And I think that for me was, before I get into it really, the massive difference I see between, let's say, a Salute in the UK, which is probably the biggest wargaming event in the UK, and an Adepticon in the US, is, I think, one is very vendor focused, going there and buying the things you need to enjoy your hobby, and 2 is the gaming that you can do whilst you're there. Yeah, so not to say that you can't do both at both, but certainly at Salute, I think the focus is a lot more around getting the vendors there, having a great experience, actually trying games, but hopefully trying and buying is the plan. But there's certainly, I would say, the vendor hall, even though Adepticon is a big event, no joke, I don't know how many people actually attend, but we're talking many thousands of people. The actual vendor hall was, I would say, almost half the size of Salute. But then again, if you're talking about playing space, and not just the classics, not just your Age of Sigmar or your 40k, but many games, there were hundreds and hundreds of tables to play. So I would absolutely recommend, if you do go to Salute, take something with you that you can play. And that kind of comes to my first pickup, really, which I actually got before we left. And this was one of these. So it was a carry case for an army. This is from a company called Fieldher, and I think they're German. I got this because the price was actually really good, and they do all custom foam with inside. So essentially in here, I won't open it up because you know what an army case looks like, but all the foam slots, you choose which army you're using. So for instance, I was taking my combat patrol for Grey Knights. They've done the inserts for combat patrol. So this has the exact number you need for that combat patrol, with a bit of extra space, because obviously if there's space, they're going to let you use the space. They're not going to just, you know, cover it over or whatever. So you can easily fit the combat patrol in here, and a few extra models, maybe some dice, some other bits and pieces. So yeah, really good. Now, I will always cover the negatives as well. I've never travelled with miniatures before, so I've never really given too much thought to it. But obviously, because this is a soft case, if you're carrying it over your shoulder, maybe you're not going a great distance, then this works perfectly fine. Absolutely no problems whatsoever. It's got a pouch at the front, it's got a handle, it's got a strap, all that business. I put this in my luggage, and therefore it did get a bit squished whilst I was traveling, and I did open it up to find, you know, for instance, my Dread Knight had a bent sword, which was actually a running joke throughout the event because every Dread Knight I saw had a bent sword. And then I lost a couple of arms. Nothing that wasn't repairable very easily, a bit of glue, kind of come to expect it when you're playing with miniatures. But I think really, next time around, I'll probably take one of the hard cases. And I even saw people do who magnetize their miniatures to trays, and that stops them from falling over completely. But this was absolutely great. So I'm really glad I got this, and it means I can change the foam inserts for whatever next combat patrol I potentially build, or even full army, or other skirmish level game, something that's not too huge. So yeah, that was the first pickup that I had, and that allowed me to take my combat patrol with me. And James did the same. James took a combat patrol of Tyranids. We took combat patrols for 40k, one because we don't play 40k enough. It's James's favourite game, and he plays it at school, plays with friends. I've very rarely dipped my toe into it. I have a few painted armies, but painted way more than played. So it felt like taking a combat patrol for me was a good entry level into learning a scaled down version of 40k. And yeah, it worked really well. We had our combat patrols, we had our dice, we had all the bits we needed, and there were just so many tables we could play on. A lot of it was booking, so that's another thing I'll sort of come on to. This is definitely one of those events where you need to get the mobile app, you need to look at the agenda, and you need to decide what it is you're going to do on which days and book those things. Some of them are free, some of them are paid for, some of them were entire painting courses by professional painters, or even celebrity painters, I guess you call them, YouTubers, who are charging you maybe $100, $200, $300, $400 to do the course. And depending on the cost, that might include models, it might include paints, it might include all sorts. But you really need to look at that agenda and determine, do I want to go on any of these courses? Am I taking the right materials? Am I getting materials? And have a look. But the other thing I will say is these things, it doesn't matter how much they cost, they sell out. Like I think almost every session that we were interested in, because we were a bit late to booking, because we just had no experience of what these events were like, most of them were booked out. Now, the reality is probably we wouldn't have gone on many of them because they were very expensive. But then again, there was plenty of free stuff as well. Free talks to go to, free gaming spaces to use, and you could book them still, but they were on a first come, first serve. So the one we spent most of our time in was the open gaming space. You know, a whole bunch of tables, maybe 30, 40 tables, filled with terrain, and you could just rock up, first come, first serve, grab one of the tables, play your game, and then come back. And we must have gone back there 10 times over the course of a few days playing our combat patrols. So really, I got a really good grip on, one, how to play 40k, you know, a cut down version, yes, but also my army, the Grey Knights, which are very, very cool. So yeah, that was that. I'll jump into some pickups and I can talk about sort of the vendor hall, which was probably, I guess, the main attraction, but I'm even going to say, actually, no, I won't say that. The vendor hall wasn't the main attraction. For me, the main attraction was seeing everyone's enthusiasm for the hobby. Like when you went to the competition halls, of which there was many, say the 40k tournament or the Age of Sigmar tournament or the Infinity tournament, there was so much just creativity in the hobby, and it really ignited my sort of mojo around hobby. I think all of us go through this. If you're in tabletop wargaming or painting miniatures or whatever it might be in and around that space, I think we all have dips and troughs where we, you know, we're really busy on something and then we take a break and then we come back and something reignites. These events are all about reigniting that passion, and seeing what people do with miniatures and paint schemes and dioramas, and even how they set up their carry cases for taking their armies, and they've decorated them and they've created something out of them. It was just fantastic. And like I say, I will show lots of images of this. The armies on parade stuff is always interesting, and we came away from it just super excited to come home and build and paint and play. And I think that's the main point of going to these events. Even if you're not a war gamer, you'll come out of there thinking, this is a hobby I need to get into. So yeah, I think that's probably got to be the highlight for me, is all of the hundreds and hundreds, thousands and thousands of people that came there, and everyone bought something. Like, I don't think I saw hardly anyone. I think you were probably one of the few, if you didn't have an army bag on your shoulder filled with miniatures and you weren't trying to play a game at some event. And again, very different to how other events are. Most events, people just rock up and they buy the stuff while they're there, where it felt like here, most people were bringing something with them, you know. So that was for me, like what really stood out was the enthusiasm for the hobby itself. But yeah, the vendor hall, I'm going to say it was about 6 rows, maybe 20 stalls a row. So, you know, over 100 stalls, I would say, 100 different companies, which isn't huge, like for these types of events. Certainly in the scales of a UK Games Expo, but even in respects to a Salute in the UK, Salute is significantly bigger when it comes to the amount of actual vendors that are there, selling their wares, selling their goods. But still a good selection. I will say, as a Brit, my goodness, do we do well in this hobby. Because unfortunately, if you're watching this in America or even Australia, but certainly if you're a Games Workshop lover, you are getting absolutely hosed on pricing in the US. Even at the second-hand level, you're paying more for second-hand miniatures than what we pay for new miniatures in the UK. I actually spoke to one guy who was American, and he buys his miniatures from Troll Trader in the UK, which is a second-hand miniatures company, and ships them to America because it's cheaper than buying in America, even at second-hand or brand new. So yeah, we went there thinking we might bring home lots of cool miniatures, but actually a lot of the companies are European based or UK based, and their pricing in the US is significantly higher than what you'd pay in the UK. So we didn't buy much in the way of miniatures. Even I was looking at getting some additional Dreadknights for my Grey Knight army, because I can run them as HQ units and also as vehicles, so I can have, like, you know, I think 6 in an army, which is pretty cool. So I was thinking, hey, I could pick some of those up. But you were talking, even for a second-hand damaged one, you were talking like $45 when they're £37 brand new in the UK. So, you know, from someone like Wayland Games or Element Games or something like that, then, you know, that was not worth doing, you know. And in brand new, you're talking more like $70, $80 for a Grey Knight, a Dread Knight. And that was pretty much across the board, you know. Whenever we looked at miniatures, some of them were astronomical in pricing. A telling sign, unfortunately, they had a little Games Workshop stand there. I wouldn't say it's little, it was a fairly significant portion of where the tournament halls were, and they were selling all sorts in there, and there was no prices on anything. You didn't find out what you were paying until you were at the till. So when you're at the till and you handed your goods over, they went, oh, that's going to be whatever it is. So all the time you're picking things up, and we did pick up a few little bits, which I'll show you from that shop specifically. You had no clue. So, you know, it is what it is. This is one of the things, and that's what I mostly aim for, by the way, is I was looking for the unique stuff, the stuff that I wouldn't see potentially elsewhere. So at the Games Workshop stand, I picked this up, which is a water bottle with the 40k winged emblem on it. I thought this was quite cool, the Astra Militarum sort of army-based drinking bottle. It is in like a leather pouch. You can take this out, you can take the water bottle out so you can wash it. But actually this turned out to be quite useful because you couldn't take drinks into the bar centre. You could buy drinks in there, which again were crazy pricing. I'm guessing if you're in America you're used to this kind of thing, but 2 drinks, like 2 Mountain Dews, was like nearly $14, and then obviously you tip on top of that because there is a tipping culture there. So you know, you're paying nearly $15 for 2 drinks, which, you know, that's pretty crazy when you think in the UK probably a bottle of Mountain Dew is £1.50, £2 max, you know. So yeah, that's what it was. So having something to take your water in, or once you get in there, having some water, and which was fantastic. You got Lake Michigan, a massive body of fresh water. The drinking water in Milwaukee is obviously fantastic, yeah, we had this, so that was quite a cool little pickup. But I think this wasn't cheap. Again, no price on it whatsoever when we were walking around, and I think when we got to the till it was like $40 or something for this. So yeah, we did pick up the there was a Skaven event miniature that we picked up. I'll try and put a photo up of that because it's actually for my son James. He has a love of Skaven, he always has had, so he had that miniature up in his room, but I will grab a picture and stick up of it. And yeah, otherwise walking around the hall, other bits and pieces we picked up, obviously the t-shirts. I wanted to get the merch, you know, this is good memorabilia, something I can actually remember the event. So it's got the Adepticon 2025 logo on it. We also picked up the hoodie. The hoodie's quite nice, it's got a big emblem on the back of it and obviously the emblem on the front. So that was nice. Again, looking for those things that we weren't going to get elsewhere. And being we were at Adepticon, I really wanted to get the Adepticon bits and pieces. So we definitely did that. We picked up some dice. So the Adepticon dice here. Trying to show those. So you can see like it's got the little logo on it. It's actually really clear numbering. A quite nice set of dice. Doesn't stop me from rolling ones constantly. But they came in 2 flavours, the red and the orange. So we got a pack of those each. What else did we get? We got these Adepticon 3D printed Adepticon objective markers. I'll try and get one out for you. Just because we normally use like anything that's laying around really, might be like a little piece of terrain or a dice or something like that, and then just measure 3 inches from it. But these were very nice little Adepticon styled yeah, just objective markers. I'm actually going to switch to the mats because the mats, we were learning so much when we were out there, and everyone uses the mats because the mats already create a 3-inch radius around the objective, so you don't have to worry about measuring whether you are or aren't within 3 inches of the objective, blah blah blah. So yeah, I'm actually probably won't use these, although we will, because we're going to use them for current games. But when I can see some nice mats that I like, they've got to be ones I like. I didn't see any out there that I was that drawn to. Then we'll probably switch over to the mats because they were a bit easier to play with. One of the other things I picked up was, obviously because I was playing Grey Knights, I went a bit heavy on Grey Knight stuff. So no Grey Knight miniatures, but I did pick up from the Baron of Dice, which was super busy. I've never really heard of the Baron of Dice before, but this stall always had a queue. We were lucky we caught it at the end of the day, and actually there was an English guy working on it, so we were chatting about how he's moved to America and things like that and what he's up to. But I picked up some Grey Knight dice from the Baron of Dice. So they've got the Grey Knight symbol on them there, and they're really nice. They're like a resin. So the actual dice, they look better in person than they do in the actual in the tin. So I'll try and show you one off there. But they're a really good quality dice. Really impressed with those. Still doesn't help my rolling of ones ability, which me and James tested while we were playing some games. I genuinely have an exceptional one rate of rolling ones, which when your army has a 2-up save and you're rolling ones, man, does that great. It really does great. Of course, I had to pick up the Grey Knight from the same place, the Grey Knight bag of dice. So this is obviously to put all your dice in. So again, nice little graphic on there. And to go with all of that, it was only right that I picked up the Grey Knight dice tray. So this is like a little magnetic dice tray. You fold all your edges in, and you've got a nice little tray to roll your dice in, which is always nice. The reason why I got the dice tray was I was a little bit disappointed by this. I didn't notice this when I first got it, but I did go in and get the Adepticon dice tray. Again, picking up things from the event because this may be the only time I ever go. But when I realised, I sort of got round, it's got the Adepticon 2024 written on it. It wasn't made clear that some of the merch is previous year's merch, and it certainly wasn't at a discount. So it's fine, it's Adepticon, but we didn't go to Adepticon 2024, we went to Adepticon 2025. So I'm a little bit disappointed that there wasn't an Adepticon 2025 dice tray, and the one I've got is from the previous year. I know it's a tiny thing, but this event is special to me because it is the last hurrah of me and my son, my oldest son, doing the hobby together. You know, I'm hoping we play for many, many years, but he's going to do other things with his life, and he might not be so enthused to come and play with his dad when he's off exploring the world and having amazing adventures. So it's a shame that that's got 2024 on it, but we know we let it go when we move on. One of the things I will say, and it's only because I've just looked at two things that I didn't actually pay for, is the people, like in the queues, in the corridors, I'm not going to say in the toilets, but at the gaming tables, everywhere you met and spoke with people. Strangers just said hello and you just started talking. I think more so than any other event I've ever been to, that I just have lovely conversations with people. And then halfway through the conversation, they would say, oh, by the way, I run a small miniatures company. Here, take a couple of miniatures. So this was one called Fat Fay Forge. And we got chatting to these guys, had no idea about they having a miniature company. And I haven't even opened this yet, so I'll do this now. And just in the chat that we were talking, you know, we were standing next to a stand that was selling airbrushes. So we just got chatting about bits and pieces. I'm a big fan of the Badger airbrush system. So, you know, they were looking at that and I said, that's a really great airbrush. I use it all the time. And then they said, oh yeah, well, you know, oh, blah, 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 blah. Oh, also we have a little miniatures company. You know, we make just a few little, what's it, anamorphic? Well, you know the thing. The animals that look like humans or act like humans. So yeah, they've 3D printed this little bunny rabbit, like a resin print. It's not going to focus on it, is it? No, it's not going to focus on it. But anyway, you can see it. It's a little bunny rabbit, very akin to like your Burrows and Badgers, you could definitely proxy this in to a Burrows and Badgers game or something of that sort of akin. And then they mentioned, oh, we've got another one. His name's Martin. I was like, oh, that's my name. And they were like, well, you've got to have one of the miniatures then. So they gave me Martin as well. So I got the rabbit. I can't remember the rabbit's name. I'll have to look it up. But then you got Martin the mouse. There we go. He's not going to focus either because the camera wants to look at me. Yeah, I'll put it in front of my face. But yeah, I'll try and get some pictures of it. But it's a lovely little creature, like an adventuring mouse with an explorer's backpack on. And again, easily put into something like Burrows and Badgers. But I think they are working on their own game. So yeah, this is these guys. And like I said, they didn't charge anything. They didn't force anything on me. They just said, hey, we're doing this. And that happened a number of times. Like, just met a number of people that were either part of a game system, were doing their own miniatures, were maybe looking at their own paint system, just so on and so forth. It was really, really lovely. We did pick up some other bits and pieces. One of the things that we do in our games is trying to do. My dog's going to bark in the background. She's very excited about this as well. So one of the things we have is things like when you're counting up. We found when we were doing combat patrol, when we're counting up our points, our scoring points for holding objectives or whatever, you end up using multiple dice because you can score 30, 40, 50 points in the course of a game. So we looked at getting sort of points counters, you know. So this is one of these kind of like, it's a plastic dial and you can rotate the top for your 10s, you can rotate the middle for your 1s. So I think you can go up to 109 points on this, which should be more than enough for any game. So we got 2 of these, so we had an easy way of counting our numbers up. Next thing was this actually. If anyone out there has got, it doesn't matter what brand you've got, one of these everlasting wet palettes. So I have the Red Grass Games one. I know Army Painter do one. I know, I mean, everyone does one now. I think Red Grass Games kind of did the first, the everlasting wet palette, and then everyone kind of has one now. Now I had the first generation of that wet palette, and my issue with it is, I don't know if it's been solved in later issues, but my issue with it is if you leave water in there for too long, your sponge goes mouldy, right? That is obviously a problem because you don't want to have one stinking water. I think you can use ionized water and other things to try and combat it. But there was a company selling little copper plates. Now these go on the corners of your mat and hold down your palette paper, your parchment paper, you can, because of the nature of the copper, now I'm not going to pretend to be any scientist here, you'd have to go to Goobertown Hobbies to get his scientific analysis on this one, it helps keep the bacteria at bay and means your wet palette won't go stinky and you can use the water for much longer. Now we'll see. You know, was I sold a gimmick or was I sold something real? Now the nice thing is when I was walking around and saw other professional painters doing demos and stuff like that, they had these on their palettes. So fingers crossed, this is the thing you need. Anyone out there with a wet palette that finds that if they leave it for a few days, bit stinky, maybe some mold has been created, grab these. I will try and stick links to everything below to the companies. It's just remembering them off the top of my head who they were, and you'll see footage of it all anyway. Yeah, these were pretty cool. Another really cool stall that we went to was called Lethal Shadows, and we actually ended up spending a fair bit of money there. They had a bit of everything really, what I'll say, but they presented it really well. Like, they'd put a lot of thought into their stall. They had projections, holograms, they had areas where you could test products. The staff were really helpful and engaging. Just a really well put together stall, which of course is always going to attract people in and obviously for them result in sales. So we ended up picking up a bunch of stuff from those guys. Things that my son has up in his room. So they had a really cool airbrush system. You've seen these things before. It's essentially a mobile airbrush. So where I have the Badger, Patriot Badger 105, and then I have a compressor, and I have the cup, and all the bits and pieces you need to have an airbrush. They had a system where it was all portable. So we've had one of these before. We've had kind of one of the Chinese cheap jobs, where it's a tiny little compressor, chargeable, and then an airbrush, and you know, they've been pretty bad. But this one was like it taken to the next level in quality. The compressor was much better. It had a detachable battery which you could charge separately or have multiple batteries to keep you going. The air pressure felt really solid and good. The airbrush was really high quality as well, you know, dual action, a really nice cup size, easy to clean, easy to take apart. So it just felt like the next level up, and I'll get some footage of that so you can see it. So that was one thing we picked up. We also got some paints. So I picked up, I really love some of the fluorescent paint jobs that people are doing, especially on things like Necrons, anything that's got a glow to it. So I want to try some of that out. There's two things I want to do. One is paint an orc army in a really grimy manner, and that's something I'm going to be doing soon. I did a Dread Knight a while ago now using some, you know, oil washes and really grimed it up. I want to do something similar but with orcs, because I think that would be really, really cool. And the other thing I want to do is take my Necrons that are a bit boring, you know, they're very silver and green, and you know, there's not much excitement to them, and add some sort of cool glow effects. So you won't be able to appreciate these because you need a black light to appreciate them. But they do these colors, and I picked up three. I picked up fluorescent blue, fluorescent yellow, and a fluorescent pink, just because they all stood out to me. But under a black light, my goodness, do these look cool. So I'm hoping that with a bit of trickery, and obviously through an airbrush, I can do some cool effects with these three paints. So I've been wanting to pick up some, and I know that Turbo Dork and a few other companies do fluorescent paints, but because we were there, these guys had deals, you know, buy X number of things and get this stuff. In fact, we ended up buying enough stuff to get some free miniatures. So they basically did these blind boxes that once you spent a certain level, you got one. If you spent the next level, you got another. We actually got a third one without even spending more. The lady just put one in the bag, so I'm not going to complain. And these aren't anything special. They're just 3D printed miniatures of various things. We got like this one's called a Bandit Mage, and these are your classic kind of print them, paint them, use them in D&D, use them in any game where you need. You could use it in Frostgrave or other games like that, but there you go, there's the little Battle Mage. Really nicely printed, really nice details, in a fairly flexible resin, so he's not going to break easy. The other ones we got were, let me just go through these. So we've got a Bandit Mage, we've got another Mage here. This looks more like a elementalist of some description. He doesn't have a name, this one. The other one had a badge on it, but yeah, he's almost like an Arabian, I would say, elementalist. He's got like a fireball in his hands there. So again, nice quality. I would say 32 mil rather than 28. And then this one here was, he looks like I'm some sort of Death Knight. But like I say, they're not gonna like, you know, you're probably not gonna use them in too much. But if you're into your D&D, go and check these guys out. They had a lot of cool miniatures. Sorry, again, it's not going to focus because it wants to talk to my face. But nice. The brush system they've got, I'll try and show this. If this doesn't work, I'll add some B-roll in or something. But essentially, their brush system is changing the tips. So keeping a single brush, but changing out your tips as and when you need them. So if I can just pop this out for a second, I will try and show you. So I maybe should have done this beforehand. What I'll do, actually I won't do this now, I'll add in some footage, but I'll describe it as I'm talking, right? So essentially you get a tub of tips. So in here you've got your, you could get synthetic or sables. My son has got all of the synthetic tips because he's not that fussed, where I have kept all of the, actually I bought additional tips, and these are all horsehair tips, so that's what I prefer. But your brush itself, it comes in almost two parts. So you've got the handle, and then you've got the the front where your ferrule is, and then you've actually got the tips here, and it's all spring loaded. So you pop out a 1 tip and you put in a 000 tip, so that you keep the same brush. And the reason why that's quite nice is because you can customize this using putty or whatever you want to do, to essentially make a tip, a brush handle that fits you, very personalized to you. And now for someone like me, who it isn't a problem at the moment, but I broke my hand a number of years ago, or a year ago now exactly, and I do get sometimes a bit of pain when holding paintbrushes. So if I can customize this to fit comfortably in my hand, I can just change this part and I always have the brush I need. And this part is always molded exactly to how I need it. And I thought that was quite a cool idea. And it just means also for portability, you know, that's your paintbrushes. You have every paintbrush you're ever going to need right here. And it just seemed like a really nice thing. So, and it wasn't expensive at all. You're talking maybe, I think, $30 or something for this, and then something for the tips. So we'll see. It might be a gimmick, who knows. I will definitely report back on this. I'll get painting, I will start using it, and I'll let you guys know what I think of this in particular. And I say my son James has got the other one. There was a deal where he could get 2 handles. I think he's got like 12 different tips, but they're all synthetics, where I opted for the additional horsehair ones, the sable ones. So that was that from there. I'm trying to think if we got anything else from there as well. I know, say, James did get some bits and pieces, but the main thing being the airbrush. But I will put in some other footage for that. But yes, the paint. So we didn't pick up many miniatures, but the ones we did pick up were these cool little like chibi miniatures. I don't know what to call them really, but they are resin printed, nostalgia, culture, nerd culture type thing. So my son picked up, for instance, some My Little Pony ones for his girlfriend. He was going to paint them up. He then picked up a Guts from Berserk miniature, and also a Genji from Chainsaw Man. Sound like I know what I'm talking about, right? But I picked up, there was loads there. I could have picked up a whole load, so I just sort of stuck with one range. But they had Ghostbusters, Aliens, Big Trouble in Little China, many different types. So the one I went with, like I said, I could have picked up a ton of them, but the one I went with was Predator, because this looked super cool. So yeah, I'll show them here, but again, you're not really going to be able to get, I'll try and take some better images so that the actual camera can focus in on them. But they're like these kind of hard resin little chibi type minis. So you've got Predator there with his mask on, you've got him here with his mask off. Very cool. You've then got Blaine with his big old minigun there, mowing down the forest, the jungle, and of course your Arnie type character here with his, you know, M16 grenade launcher machine gun. So yeah, I just thought these were really fun. They weren't very expensive. I think it was about $30 for the whole set. And it's just something nice to paint up and put on display in your room or in your display cabinet or whatever. So yeah, like I say, it wasn't a ton of miniatures to buy, but that's what we did pick up. And then there was just little bits and pieces which I'll show, like 3 little miniatures here and there, but nothing crazy. We certainly didn't come home with any new big box game. And one of the reasons for that is we had a bit of a revelation while we were out there. We kept playing Combat Patrol. We played Combat Patrol maybe 10 times between myself and James, and it really gave us the bug for wanting to do more. I think if we'd had, you know, more miniatures with us for our armies, we would have gone from Combat Patrol to maybe 1,000 points, 1,500 points. Because once we got into the swing of the game, and also because so many games are going on around us, you felt part of something. It was really quite a cool experience, and that's made us come home feeling like we should go deep into a game. You know, we should really learn to build and love an army and play. And I get it that sometimes 40k gets a bit of a bad rap. You know, people prefer, you know, the smaller games, or people are funny around the rules, all this sort of stuff. And maybe that's the case in tournaments, but certainly in the casual spaces that we were hanging out in, we had such a laugh with the people that were there, and talking about the paint jobs, talking about the rules, talking about their armies and the aesthetics of their armies, and just, you know, how they presented them, how they were storing them, how they were playing them, and it was infectious. It really was. So by the time we left there after 4 days of literally gaming, we just come home with a renewed energy around all of this stuff. So you know, the table that I'm recording on right now is already set up for a big game of 40k, and we're going to be playing this week, and I'm already looking at how I can expand my combat patrol with some more miniatures, you know, some additional boxes of combat patrol, frankly, because you get such good stuff in there, but also more dreadnoughts, some dreadnoughts, some hero figures, and so on, so that I can, you know, get to that 2,000, 2,500 points, lots of different options that I can play with, and learn as much as I can about the Grey Knights, reading some of the lore behind who the Grey Knights were, and why they are what they do, and so on and so forth. So if anything, like I said, the event wasn't for me about going there and buying things. It was going there and not falling back in love, but getting energy, getting refreshed, getting renewed around why we do tabletop wargaming, and the love that we have for it, and the fun that it brings, and the people involved, and that for me was the magic of Adepticon. You know, I've been to other events in the UK, and not saying any of them are bad by any stretch, but this one just felt like it was a proper community event. Yeah, there was, of course, tournaments, there was painting competitions, there was all the classic stuff, but for me it was the people. The people were fantastic, everyone I met. And I'm really bad at doing this, by the way. You know, there were lots of like YouTubers there, famous people in the hobby, and I did say hello to a couple of them, but I really struggle with that. And certainly no one knows me, and that's not that, you know, that would be weird as well. But I really struggle with going up to these big YouTubers out there and saying, oh hi, I love what you do, even though I watch all their stuff all the time. But when I did pluck up the courage to say hello to a couple of them, super nice people. But even just the general public, just catching up with people, standing next to someone at a store, they go, what do you think about this? And you start talking, and then, you know, find out where they're from, where they've travelled from. Of course, everyone's always interested that you've travelled all the way from the UK. Your accent sticks out like a mile. So yeah, that always was a good conversation starter. But yeah, ultimately, you know, so glad we finally did it. I'm so glad we decided that this was the year. James, you know, becoming a man, turning 18, is our last opportunity to maybe do this together. Maybe it won't be, but that's kind of where I'd got to in my head. So I'm really glad we did get it done. It was a great event. I highly recommend it, especially if you're in the US and you can get to Milwaukee quite easily. I might even recommend driving, like if you can get to Chicago. Like we flew from Chicago to Milwaukee, and I don't think there was much need to do that. I think it's only an hour's drive from Chicago, and the roads are fantastic to drive on. America's always a great place to drive. Food's fantastic. The people are great. I don't have a negative thing to say about the American experience at all. I've been to America a number of times, and I just always have a fantastic time, always. And James was the same. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Great event, highly recommend it. New venue. I don't know the old venue, so I don't know, but certainly this venue was really good, and I've got no complaints there whatsoever. Great people, great experience. If I had one improvement, make the vendor hall bigger. There's got to be more vendors out there that you could invite. You know, I think they could have easily done an entire significantly sized hall full of vendors, because I think if you just go there for that, you can get around it in a couple of hours and you'll be done, you know. So obviously, but I don't think that's the focus, and therefore I'm not holding it against them in any way, because I think the focus is much more on the community, the gaming, the painting, the competitions, the talks, the tutorials, all the other things that are going on, and the vendor hall is just one thing of all of it, and not the main attraction, as it were. So yeah, there we go. I hope you liked my little insight to Adepticon. I don't know if the footage is going to carry on throughout this. I'm hoping I've showed stuff along the way, and maybe I'll leave a load of footage at the end. But wherever we are in this video, if you got this far, thank you very much. And I hope I gave you a bit of an insight into our journey to Adepticon 2025 in Milwaukee. It was fantastic. And yeah, thanks very much for watching. All right. Bye-bye. Teeth! 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 Black tooth! A black tooth! You go?